And I'm going to try and make this lecture quicker than the Bears run for the Super Bowl. So,
Third and long punt.
Anyhow, this is on understanding honeybees and pheromone communications, and basically, everything that's been talked about tonight just threads one into the next, So, what we want to do is we want to understand their forms of communication, which, where's Richard? Richard, thank you, that helps too. Greg, what you can help. Honeybees are a social colony, and they're a family unit. That's how they function. If one part isn't there, the other parts don't function. They're all dependent upon each other. So we can't lose a queen and still have a continuing productive hive. We can't lose all the drones and still have a continually productive hive. There's things that have to happen within this structure. And that's what we're going to talk about, is how they communicate. First, the queen. She's the sole reproductive entity, the mother of sexually sterile workers. Okay? She's the one that manages the growth of the colony and controls a lot of the personality. When you breed queens, you find that a lot of times the drone that mates with the queen is where you get the docile trait, docile personality too. So there's basically two things that are going to affect your hive: the queen and the beekeeper. Okay, and the age and health of both the queen and the beekeeper depends on how well your hives do. Okay, the queen is a very important part of it, like what Richard was saying. She handles a lot of the structure of it. She lets people know. She communicates with them. Drones. Drones are present in the spring and summer. Drones have 16 chromosomes. Queens and workers have 32. Okay. One thing that's interesting though is drones are asexual. How are they produced? From an unfertilized egg. Okay. So that's why they have half the chromosomes. And in the fall, the boys get thrown out. Don't need them. Don't need more mouths to feed over winter. Okay. I want to talk about. Go ahead.
Who's laying the unfertilized egg?
The queen.
So she can.
She can select whether it's a fertilized or unfertilized egg. Okay. And what's interesting is she also emits a pheromone so that the other bees know whether it's one of her eggs or a worker egg too. So, and we get into that with pheromone communication. Pheromone communication is a major factor of communication within a hive and out and abroad as foragers.
Hey, Joe,
Yes.
excuse me a minute. Commander here, Pete's getting ready to go home, and there's a couple of vehicles on the side of the building blocking them in. There's a little white Ford with Illinois plates on it, and a white Suburban, or a Tahoe or something. Whoever's got those, if they could.
Along the tracks or?
No, just outside of the building here. Right around on the side of the building. Okay. What do you got? Okay. Anybody got a?
I've got a Suburban though.
Okay.
Yeah, I have like a silver Tahoe, but it's parked
No,
closer
just
to the
it's
tracks.
just two white vehicles there. If you could move them anywhere, that'd be great. Thank you.
So we have 4 stages of a bee. Okay. First one is the egg. Second is larva. Third is the pupa, and the fourth is going to be the adult. So those stages are about 15 to 16 days. Okay. So when we talk about the life cycle of a bee, we're talking about a worker, for example, that lives for about a month and a half. Okay, and that includes their whole, from the time they go from an egg on out. So when we talk about genetics, like what we were talking about earlier with queens, putting a new queen in to replace your genetics, that's how quickly these things change. The genetics of the hive change because summer bees have a very short life cycle. The adult life is about 5 to 6 weeks in the summer. Why is that? Why do summer bees die so fast?
They work themselves to death.
Yes. You ever see their wings are just tattered? Yeah, they literally work themselves to death. Okay? They don't have a retirement package. So, the first 3 weeks are spent as a house bee. Put this in perspective. The time that from the time they're an egg, to the time that they hatch out and become an adult, then there's 3 weeks as a house bee, then there's roughly 3 weeks as a forager. That's a pretty short life cycle, okay? So, as a house bee, they're going to spend their time cleaning comb, feeding larvae, secreting wax, ventilating the hive, building comb, transferring nectar, ripening nectar, and working as a guard bee. Roughly at day 21, she will go out onto your landing board and she will start taking orientation flights. How many of you guys can recognize what an orientation flight looks like? She's going to be out looking around saying, hey, where am I? She'll go out, fly a little bit, she'll face the hive, then she'll come back in, she'll fly out again, they'll start doing loops, then next thing you know, you'll see them doing loops into the air, figure eights, things like that. So, and it's pretty neat to see. Usually, early afternoon is when you see that. Something to watch for. Winter bees. They live about 4 to 6 months. So, God, I hope they do. I hope they make it. I hope that they make it through winter. As winter goes on, that queen is still laying. Okay, how many of you guys have been in your hives and see brood in there now? It might be just a little bit, but it's still something. Okay, still producing more. Winter populations. January, February, what we're looking at right now, you're going to be 10 to 15,000 bees is all. That's not much, because the bees are going to be changing cluster. They're going to be dying off. Midsummer, you're going to see in a good healthy colony 50 to 60,000 bees. And what we're talking about is deeps. So to keep that in perspective. What I want to probably jump forward on here is when you get a colony that's too big, what happens to your queen when we talk about pheromones? She goes through that hive, and in case we don't get to this in the rest of the lecture, this is really, really important. When you've got a great colony that you've left good, massive, you said, hey, I'll just get the honey next year, and then next thing you know, they start swarming, or they start re-queening themselves. There's a reason why. It has everything to do with pheromones. If they can't smell that queen there, they're going to produce another queen. And then you're in for trouble. So having a gigantic hive isn't always a benefit. How do 60,000 bees communicate? Physical dances. Right, Richard? Something you talked about. Physical contact.
Feel.
How do they communicate to a beekeeper when they're inside your veil? They let you know. So they have physical contact with other bugs. You might see them grab a small hive beetle and fly off with it. That's their way of communicating. Hey, I don't want you here. You don't see much on how they communicate physically. It's always a dance or something else. One other thing is, who's heard a queen bee zeep?
What?
A queen bee zeep. Or toot. They call it tooting. Okay? Google it, see if you can find some YouTube videos or something like that. It's really neat. It's really neat to hear it. Okay? And one of these days when I get around to it, I need to make videos of it, because as you're processing queens and stuff, they're making little music and things like that. It's really interesting. So they don't have ears to vocalize things, but they feel vibrations, which is one way bees communicate on comb is through vibration. The important thing that I want to work on tonight is pheromones, pheromone communication, and why understanding that is so important to what you do. Here's a list of 10 pheromones that we'll end up covering in lectures over the next years, whatever it is, whenever we can fit it in. The alarm pheromone. Worker, that's what they've got, and it's by their stinger. So when you smell that, what smell does it smell like? That stinger. When you get stung, what do you smell? Banana. It's that banana smell. When they're upset, their gland is by their stinger, and it's a banana smell. You know, you open that hive, they emit that pheromone. That's an alarm smell. That's how they communicate to the rest of the hive. Hey, something's going on. Somebody's messing with us. It's not supposed to be there. It's that big white monster again.
Remember, right off the bat, a tip was given to me to never eat a banana on the day you're going to go out and work your bees.
Yeah. That's serious? Yeah. Yeah. Brood recognition pheromone. Okay. It's emitted by the brood. Now, I don't want to get into every little one of these and expound upon them tonight because we'll work on them as we go. Drone pheromone. It attracts other drones to a drone congregation area. That's how the drones know where to go so that they can mate with the queens. They emit a pheromone. They all find a spot somewhere, usually over an open field, up in the sky, and they, releasing that pheromone, they know where to go. The Workers Gland. It distinguishes queen-laid eggs from worker-laid eggs. That way, the rest of the colony can go in on the worker-laid eggs and eat them, destroy them, okay? Egg marking. It's similar to the above Workers Gland, and it's a way of the queen releases a pheromone so that they know that is their genetics and their egg from their colony, because they can distinguish ones from other colonies. When you say, hey, I'm going to put brood in there from another colony, if you put open eggs in there, they can say, no, that ain't going to happen. We're going to kill those off. Usually you wait till they're capped. And that's something that I don't know how much research is done. I just know that they can distinguish it. Footprint pheromone. The Tarsal Gland. Queens and workers have that, and it's a tracking alert. It's like, you're watching your GPS and it tracks everywhere you go. Well, with workers and queens, same way. So drones have it too, and it's not as complex, and I'm not really sure what the drone's pheromone for that is, but obviously the queen's is, when she's in the hive, they know that she's in the hive by the presence of her tracks. Workers, we'll get into that in a few minutes. Forager pheromone. Workers have that. It's released by the older bees, and it's basically a population ratio control to make sure the nurse bees stay in a certain quantity in relationship to the forager bees. So there's a lot of these things going on that when you pull a frame up and you look at it and say, hey, it looks good to me, you're really not seeing all the pheromone type things that are occurring in a hive. The Nasanov pheromone is located, it's a locating beacon, and the workers release it as a very unique smell. It's a smell that can be smelled for a distance. I've got some fantastic photographs of it that I'm going to share here in a moment. The queen mandibular gland, it has a huge list of things. We'll spend a whole session speaking on that. Let's see, what else have we got? The retenue gland is released by the queens. I've got some pictures on my website that shows worker bees surrounding the queen, attending to her, which is it's beautiful to see that picture. I mean, to me, it's like I could look at that every day. And that's what she's doing. She's releasing that pheromone. They're coming in there and attending to her. So, first we're going to talk about the Nasanov gland. And I don't know if you can see the outline of the bee, but the Nasanov gland is right at the butt here, in between the last and second to last segment, between T6 and T7. This is what its purpose is. It's to recruit worker bees. So while they're out fanning, hey, they're trying to say, hey, come visit our hive. And we don't really see how much the transference of bees from one hive to another. Who's heard of drift? You get a couple hives next to each other, they can drift. You know why they're probably drifting is because they're catching a scent that they like at another hive, maybe a little bit better. It signals to bees that have lost their way. For example, a young forager goes out and says, well, I'm not sure where I'm at. they catch a whiff of that smell, they can get their way guided home. Okay. We open the hive, and this is the most common time to see it. You open the hive, and all of a sudden, on top of the frames, you see these bees with their butts up in the air, and they're fanning. It's to calm the hive and get the bees that have swarmed out of the hive and jumped out and said, "Oh, what's going on here?" This is to get them to come back in, that they know this is their home. Okay. I've got a pond right near our hives, so oftentimes I'll see the bees going down there to get a drink, and you always see a few of them that are posing with their butts up in the air and they're flapping their wings, and you wonder why. Well, kind of weird spot. Are they just crazy about what they're drinking, or what is it? No, they're actually signaling to other bees within their colony where the water source is. So as they're coming by, they know, hey, that's the spot. That's the spot, because they leave that smell as kind of a tracking beacon. If you got bland food, for example, flowers that aren't as odoriferous, sometimes they'll use it in that form too. They'll be on those flowers fanning to release that smell, so that other bees from their colony can also come there and collect nectar or pollen. When the queen goes out on mating flight, you'll often see them out there on the landing board fanning, so that their queen comes back to their hive. Now, I breed queens. Sometimes the queens don't go back to their hive. They go somewhere else, and then they fight with the queen that's there, and then one of them's going to die. So this is their way of saying, hey, this is your home, come back to here. And that's what the hive's hoping for, is that they've got her out there, raised her up, and she goes, takes the mating flight, comes back home, makes it a productive queen right hive again. So that's another purpose of the gland. Another possibility can be to attract a queen to a queenless hive. Mm-hmm. So you can see how this blends over. If you've got multiple hives that are out there, and one of them is queenless, they're out there fanning, all of a sudden you've got a new queen there. And I've had that happen, so I know it, because we mark them and we know what's there. It's also a signal to young foragers on orientation flights. So we covered that a few minutes ago. So that when the foragers go out, they come back in and they know that's their home till they learn the route. They'll do it near larvae. When they have to make an emergency queen, they'll decide, hey, this is the larva we're going to use to make that emergency queen, and they'll start drawing cells, because they'll sit there and signal, this is what we want. And it's a longer acting pheromone that is only found in workers. So each one of these pheromones, some of them have more volatile properties, more volatile chemicals. I don't want to get into all the chemistry of this, because to the average beekeeper, that's not important. It's knowing what the pheromone does, what to look for, what's going on within your hive. Because if you can recognize a lot of these things going on, you can make a determination of the status of your hive. Okay?
So it's only the workers that are producing the Nasonox,
That's correct.
not the queen. The queen
No,
have her own
not
pheromones?
the queen. The queen doesn't have that gland, and a drone doesn't either. Just the workers. So this one up here is saying, hey, show them your Nasonox gland. And you can see their little butts are up in the air. Right? That's what it looks like. How many of you guys have seen that out on the landing board? Okay, some of you?
Good.
Yeah, good. Okay, we're going to get some blowed up views of it.
I didn't know what they were doing, but I saw it.
Now you can see it's kind of like a pinkish white spot right here. They separate that and expose the gland, and they'll be flapping their wings like crazy, because that's spreading that scent. And we'll have these pictures up on Facebook too, so that you can see close-ups, good quality pictures of this. As we break down the line art of the bee, it's between the 6th and 7th paraguide. Right here. That's where it's located. Okay. Now I want to move into the Tarsal Pheromone. The Earhart's gland. It's located at the 5th tarsomere on the legs of the bees. Okay? And every leg's got it except this particular queen. How many legs does this queen got?
Oh.
How many? Just as a note, when you look, she's got 5 legs. She was injured. So she has 5, just 5 of them, not 6 like everybody else. What it is in a queen, it's a reassurance of the colony that they have a queen. When we talked about that, hey, big hive, she's got to be able to travel that whole hive in order to spread her scent enough that everybody's calm and knows that they have a queen. Because if it's so big that she can't make it through the whole thing or gets lazy and old, as she gets lazy and old, the pheromone is not as strong. So that's when they decide, we got a problem. Let's whack her and put another one in place. So with that, it inhibits queen cell construction and swarming. And it's an oily secretion that we can't see, we can't smell, but through some sort of certain type chromatography, something like that, they can see these things. Here we go. That's where the tarsal gland is located. On the ends of the foot, right there.
Can't see.
So sorry. Okay.
Thank you.
At the ends of each one of the feet. Okay, here's a microscopic view that I took, I think yesterday morning. To give you an idea, close up, this is the hind legs of the worker bee, and that's where that gland is located. So when they walk, everywhere they walk, they're leaving a scent. The workers, the queen, the drones. So here's what it's for. It's a footprint pheromone. The queens have 12 specific chemicals that they can isolate that this is the queen. The queen secretes more of it than workers, up to, I think it's 13 times more of this pheromone than a worker does. So it's a much stronger smell. Obviously, she needs that stronger smell for them to be able to identify it throughout more of the hive too. Young queens secrete at a higher rate than the older queens. We talked about that already. So as they get older, it gets weaker, and then they say, hey, maybe it's time to requeen her. That's when they choose to do it themselves sometimes. Workers have 11 specific chemicals. Drones have 1 specific chemical to this. It's the been there, done that pheromone. You're going to know where they've been. Whether a worker goes out and lands on a flower, that scent is going to be on the flower. So when the other bee goes there, in their colony, they're going to say, somebody else has been here. How much nectar could possibly be left? You see how this works? It's their way of communicating inside and outside the hive. And it's a longer acting pheromone. Some of them are very volatile. For example, like what we talked, that banana smell. That's a brief pheromone. Okay. Possible purposes of the tarsal gland pheromone. In the queen, her tracks inhibits the construction of queen cells, queen rearing, and swarming, because they know she is present. It doesn't stop it because they can choose to do it anyhow, but it does inhibit it. The rate of secretion is 13 times more than a worker. When we talk about the worker's pheromone and what its purpose is, it's to signal other foragers where they've been. Colonies prefer to forage where their own cohabitants, their own worker sister bees are at. They prefer to go to the same spots. That's why when they decide themselves, after you've planted that field of buckwheat, that they're going to go, another half mile further to get somebody else's dandelions, and you're sitting there saying, why did I plant this buckwheat? It's because that's why they chose it, and it's been a repeated thing that they're going to start following somebody else that's been there. That's kind of how it works out. So, workers continually release footprints everywhere they go. The tarsal gland pheromone at the entrance of a hive attracts more bees. Numbers for numbers. The entrance of a hive, you might have 400 more in a given amount of time. come to that entrance because of that smell. They prefer it. They look for that smell. Whereas another entrance on another hive, it might be weaker because they don't have the volume. So sometimes when we say a hive next to it gets adrift, it might be because they're smelling so many more going in and out that they're attracted to it. You know, that's one of the theories behind this. Older comb may also be preferred over new comb. How many of you have some old comb that doesn't matter what you do, they always want to use that old comb, no matter how gnarly it gets looking? Exactly. That's one of the reasons why. It's got the presence of that pheromone in it. Okay. That's my short little run through on the pheromones. Hopefully, you know, as we get a chance, little segments here and there, I'll throw in some more. What questions do you have about these pheromones?
How do they know that it's, like, when they're using it to recognize the bees from their own hive, how do they know it's their bees? Do they all have the same pheromone, and if so, how?
They all have the same general pheromone, but it's mixed in different quantities. So you might have 3 parts ester to another part of this and another part of that. That gives it kind of like mixing a perfume. It can all have the same rose base to it, but it might be the other things that are in it that give it a different smell that they can distinguish.
How do they develop the same, like, how does, you know, this bee and this bee from the same hive end up with the same pheromone mixture?
Genetics.
Okay.
Genetics.
All the sisters.
Yeah, all the sisters. Yep, they all part of the same family.
Would it make sense to
Eric?
handle bees at the entrance before opening your hive?
Would it make sense to handle bees at the entrance before opening your hive?
Because of maybe having more bees there to be
Interesting
able to
thought.
get in your
Uh,
hands before you start opening.
Remember, at the entrance, they're more defensive too.
Guard's gonna put
So,
out more.
you know,
yeah.
what's that?
Guard's gonna put off more warning alarms.
Right. Guard might be putting off more warning alarms.
Guards are more at
You'd be putting
entrance
go
than-
pheromones on it too.
What's that?
You'd be putting go pheromones on it.
Right. Yeah, they can smell us. We have unique smells to them too. All right. So, now, are you guys ready for bee trivia? Go ahead.